Look at your bank account right now. Suppose you have 100 million dong in savings, accumulated after years of staying up late and waking up early, traded with sweat and even your health. Now, close your eyes and imagine a world where that 100 million dong never, ever loses its value. You wouldn't need to frantically buy gold to stash in a safe, wouldn't need to stressfully throw your money into the risky stock market with its flashing red and green charts, and wouldn't need to shoulder massive bank loans to buy a piece of agricultural land in the suburbs hoping it appreciates to shelter from the inflation storm. Just leave that money in the bank, or even stuff it under your bed. 10 or 20 years later, it would still have the exact same purchasing power to buy you the exact same car, the exact same house at today's prices. Sounds like a brilliant financial paradise, right? A perfect world where the value of your labor is perfectly preserved across generations. But what is the price of admission to that paradise? It is waking up on a Monday morning to an email announcing your termination because your company couldn't borrow a single dime of working capital to keep operating. Worse, the bank holding your 100 million dong just filed for bankruptcy, and in that world, no government or central bank is allowed to print money to compensate you. Your money evaporates permanently into the void. Welcome to the brutal reality of the gold standard, where stability comes with economic death sentences that leave no room for clemency. Everything we take for granted today, from how your salary is paid, to how real estate prices soar to absurd levels every decade, to the multi-trillion-dollar bailout packages flying across financial news, all stem from a historical secret hidden away on a quiet weekend in mid-August 1971. It wasn't simply a matter of U.S. President Richard Nixon stepping up to the podium on national television to read a piece of paper. It was essentially a political thriller, the greatest act of treachery in human financial history. Let's rewind time and fly to Camp David, the highly classified U.S. presidential retreat hidden deep in the Maryland woods. Here, Nixon, along with Treasury Secretary John Connally and a small group of close advisors, held secret meetings for 3 days and nights. The room was thick with cigar smoke and ruthless geopolitical calculations. They did not inform the State Department, let alone consult international allies or the global monetary system that revolved around the dollar axis. Why did they commit such a monumental act? Because the United States at that time was standing on the brink of an irreversible financial collapse. They had been too arrogant, printing endless amounts of paper money to fund the brutal Vietnam War, while simultaneously pumping money into massive social welfare programs to buy voter ballots. The physical gold reserves hidden deep within the Fort Knox vaults were evaporating at an alarming rate as European nations, particularly France and the UK, sniffed out the deception and rushed to exchange their paper dollars for real gold, as per international agreements. America had played an inflationary gamble. They had spent far beyond their actual wealth, and now they were losing miserably. Instead of tightening their belts, instead of cutting military spending or admitting defeat, the Nixon administration made a cold-blooded decision. They announced the complete severance of the link between the US dollar and gold. That act, stripped of its beautiful diplomatic rhetoric, was in essence the largest and most legal large-scale default in human history. The US officially reneged on its gold debt to the entire world. The classic, arrogant quote thrown by Secretary John Connally at the European delegations following that shock reshaped the entire modern monetary era, a quote embodying unchallenged power: "The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem." From the moment that fateful gavel dropped, the heavy golden anchor was severed. The global economic ship was officially cast adrift into the endless and stormy open seas of fiat money. Fiat money is a strange and illusory magic. Unlike gold, which has intrinsic value due to its physical scarcity, fiat money has value simply because the government holds a gun to our heads and forces us to believe it has value, compelling us to use it to pay taxes under the threat of imprisonment. This transition unlocked an unprecedented superpower in human evolution for the state: the ability to print money without any physical limits. With just a few silent mouse clicks in server rooms cooled by liquid nitrogen, the US Federal Reserve can create billions, trillions of dollars out of thin air. But, and this is a devastating, but, that colossal amount of money born from the void is never distributed equally to everyone. This is where the dark shadow of inequality rises, a ruthless economic phenomenon historically known as the Cantillon effect. When a pristine stream of new money is pumped into the economy, those standing closest to the money printer are the ones bathed in the first shower of wealth. They are none other than the giant Wall Street banks, the shadowy venture capital funds, and the multinational corporations. They receive this credit at rock-bottom interest rates near zero, and immediately use that financial weapon to snap up hard assets, sweeping up prime real estate, valuable stocks, and potential tech companies. By the time this money slowly trickles down to the bottom of society, reaching the hands of ordinary workers through meager wage increases, the prices of every necessity, from a loaf of bread and a gallon of gas to rent, have skyrocketed to the clouds. Inflation, if you look deeply into its core nature, is not a natural market phenomenon like a storm or a drought. Inflation is a stealth tax, the most silent and sophisticated blood-sucking machine ever designed to transfer wealth from the struggling working class into the pockets of the wealthy elite. You work harder, you sweat more, yet you inexplicably grow poorer, while the assets of billionaires casually double or triple after every economic crisis. This profoundly explains why, in today's modern world, a massive segment of cryptocurrency supporters, especially the Bitcoin community, are so passionately and extremely fervent. They are not just investing, they are participating in a financial crusade. They see in Bitcoin a digital version of the gold standard, an ultimate asset with a strictly hard-capped supply of 21 million coins. No matter who the US president is, no matter how panicked the US Federal Reserve gets, no power on earth can press a button to print a single additional Bitcoin. They fiercely believe that seizing the money-printing machine from the hands of politicians and returning the control of the money supply to mathematics and cryptography is the only way to save humanity from the slavery of inflation. They want to erect a rigid physical boundary, similar to the iron discipline the gold standard once created in the past. But, is that world of absolute limits as rosy as its financial devotees claim? To answer this question, we must bravely flip over to the dark side of the gold standard metal, which harbors a true monster, an economic nightmare far more devastating than the ghost of inflation. That monster is named the Great Deflation. If we assume that the Camp David betrayal in 1971 never happened, and the world of 2026 was still firmly chained to the finite amount of gold resting in dark subterranean vaults, the global economy would be strangled. It sounds great for consumers. Who wouldn't like commodity prices to drop every day? Today you see a high-end phone priced at $1,000, but you know for sure that next month it will only be $900, and next year maybe only $700. This continuous price drop stimulates a highly toxic mass psychological syndrome, delayed consumption. Everyone would stop buying things, clinging tightly to every penny in their wallets because they believe tomorrow their money will buy more. When billions of people simultaneously stop spending, the circulating lifeblood of the economy freezes. Businesses, from tiny street-side cafes to massive manufacturing plants, would see their revenues plunge disastrously in a straight vertical line. Unsold inventory piles up, with no profits to reinvest. The only option for businesses to survive the day is to slash operating costs ruthlessly. And the biggest, easiest cost to cut for any business is human labor. You would witness massive layoffs dragging on endlessly, month after month. The salaries of those lucky enough to keep their jobs would also be squeezed mercilessly. However, that is merely the prelude to the cruelty. The true scythe of the gold standard would fall upon the heads of debtors, turning their lives into a living hell. Let's try a simple comparison. In our current inflationary fiat world, when you borrow money to buy a house, inflation is actually secretly helping you pay off your debt. Over 10 or 20 years, the devaluation of money makes your fixed debt much smaller relative to your increased nominal income. But in the brutally deflationary world of the gold standard, money becomes increasingly valuable and scarce every day. This means that your debt burden, your mortgage, car loan, or business capital, would bloat every day and gradually crush you. With income shrinking due to corporate wage cuts, while the real value of the debt grows heavier, millions of people would fall into an inescapable spiral of default. Banks would ruthlessly foreclose, seizing homes and throwing countless families onto the streets. The gold standard, championed as the paradise of stability, ultimately reveals its true form as a guillotine that severs all hopes of the poor to borrow money and change their lives. Whether you choose to live under a system of infinitely printed money, fiat, or limited money, gold, there is one heartbreaking truth that never seems to change: the working class are always the first pawns to be sacrificed on the macroeconomic chessboard of the ruling elite. To fully comprehend the blood-soaked inflexibility of a world clamped down by gold, we must conduct a haunting historical simulation. Let's place the two greatest economic disasters of the 21st century, the 2008 global financial crisis and the 2020 COVID-19 pandemic, under the lens of the gold standard. Let's start with the dark autumn days of 2008. In the actual history we lived through, when the massive cancerous tumor of subprime mortgage loans burst, triggering the earth-shattering collapse of the giant investment bank Lehman Brothers, the entire global financial system was pushed to the very edge of the abyss of annihilation. Within days, trust evaporated completely, banks stopped lending to each other, and the world's credit arteries clogged. To prevent a literal doomsday, the U.S. Federal Reserve and its allied central banks chose to throw open the floodgates. They launched unprecedented quantitative easing, QE, programs, printing trillions of dollars out of thin air to buy up toxic assets, bail out colossal financial institutions like AIG and Citibank, and flood the system with cash to keep ATMs from running dry. That rescue decision ignited a massive wildfire of moral outrage among the public. The suited bank executives on Wall Street, the greedy men who ruthlessly engineered this mess using dark derivative magic, not only avoided prison but received giant bailout checks funded directly by taxpayer money. It was the peak of corruption, the ultimate injustice of the fiat system, where profits are privatized, but risks are socialized. But now, let's flip the chessboard. Imagine the 2008 scenario unfolding in a world where the gold standard still reigns supreme. Day 1, Lehman Brothers declares bankruptcy. The U.S. government frantically checks its ledgers, examines the gold reserves at Fort Knox, and realizes a horrifying truth: they do not possess enough physical gold to print the colossal amount of dollars needed to pump emergency liquidity into the markets. The Constitution and the rules of the gold standard tie their hands tight. They can only stand by in helpless impotence. Day 5, with no bailout money, the insurance behemoth AIG collapses in a domino effect. A cascade of global derivative contracts worth tens of trillions of dollars instantly turns into scrap paper. Day 10, absolute panic spreads from Wall Street down to the deepest corners of remote rural towns. The public loses faith completely, rushing en masse to retail banks to withdraw hard cash to buy food and supplies. But the commercial banks' vaults are empty, and the central bank is strictly prohibited from printing emergency cash loans due to gold backing regulations. The largest commercial banks in America shut down simultaneously, sealing their glass doors. Day 30, the catastrophe strikes the real economy with the devastating force of a tsunami. Tens of thousands of small and medium-sized businesses cannot borrow a single cent of working capital to pay their employees at the end of the month. The global supply chain breaks entirely because commercial letters of credit are no longer guaranteed by banks. Cargo ships lie dead at port, supermarket shelves are stripped bare. What would you choose? Do you choose to defend financial morality, adhering to the iron discipline of the gold standard to thoroughly purge those greedy bastards on Wall Street, but in return, tens of millions of innocent people lose their jobs, their homes, and face starvation in a second Great Depression that lasts for decades? Or do you grit your teeth, close your eyes, and accept the bitter injustice of pumping bailout money to the very perpetrators of the crime, just to keep the economy from collapsing back into the Stone Age? The gold standard robs us of that second choice. It is not a gentle savior, it is a bloody purge where the heaviest burden is still borne by the poor. That fatal inflexibility was exposed even more clearly and 100 times more ruthlessly in the spring of 2020, when the dark shadow of the COVID-19 pandemic swept the globe. The world economy hit pause, freezing completely under emergency medical lockdowns. In our most recent actual history, the US government frantically unleashed massive stimulus packages totaling over $5 trillion in just a few months. They sent checks worth thousands of dollars straight into the mailboxes of millions of citizens, funded billions in payrolls to help businesses keep employees at home, and pumped emergency liquidity so the hospital system wouldn't collapse under the pressure of patients. All of that life-saving money, from start to finish, was conjured out of thin air by the central bank and tacked directly onto the national debt bill. Under the gold standard regime, such a humanitarian rescue scenario would be pure science fiction. In the world of gold, governments have no such thing as flexible fiscal space. Not a single cent of relief money can be issued if the government isn't collecting taxes, and amidst total lockdowns, with factories closed and restaurants dark, no one is working to generate taxable income. The economy would suffer a massive cardiac arrest instantly. Businesses would go bankrupt en masse after just 2 weeks of closure. Tens of millions of people would be thrown onto the streets with zero social safety nets to catch them. Citizens would be unable to obey lockdown orders because they would need to go out and forage so they wouldn't starve to death before dying from the virus. Chaos would erupt, riots and looting would run rampant through the streets, and the collapse of democratic institutions would be an irreversible consequence. The gold standard in this moment is like a heavily armored, incredibly expensive iron suit. It protects you very well against the minor scratches of inflation during peacetime, but when a tsunami of crisis hits, the sheer physical weight of that armor will drag you straight to the bottom of the ocean without a single life preserver. And finally, if we cast our eyes into the not-too-distant future, to the global geopolitical landscape in 2026, the enduring existence of the gold standard would spawn a bizarre new world order, heavily tinged with the tones of dark dystopian novels. In a world dominated by hard physical assets, America's ability to weaponize the dollar would be utterly stripped away. The US could not use its control over the SWIFT international payment system as a trump card to punish and sanction rival nations as they do today, because ultimate power would no longer lie in who controls the banking data servers, but in who possesses the most massive physical gold reserves in their vaults. The global balance of power would shift at terrifying speeds, falling straight into the hands of nations with the largest natural gold reserves and the strongest mining capabilities. Russia, with its magnificent gold mines buried beneath the permafrost of Siberia, along with South Africa, would suddenly hold the cards of power capable of dictating the life or death of the entire Western economy. But the most terrifying and insidious threat of all would be the rise of China. Deeply aware of the fatal flaw in the Western fiat system for a long time, over the past decades, China has been quietly, feverishly hoarding and stockpiling a colossal amount of gold on the global black market, a secret number that Western intelligence agencies can only guess at. If the gold standard still ruled the world in 2026, Beijing could easily launch a fatal dawn strike. They would simply need to officially announce their massive gold reserves, declare the yuan backed by real gold at a fixed exchange rate, and instantly, the absolute throne of the US dollar would be miserably deposed. The US would fall into complete passivity and total despair. They could not print money to retaliate. To survive, America would have to tighten its belt to an agonizing degree, forced to eradicate all trade deficits with the world. Because under a gold standard mechanism, every single iPhone, every toy, every shirt imported from China would have to be paid for in real gold bars physically moved from the Fort Knox vaults onto ships and handed over to Beijing's treasury. Global trade would stagnate as nations played extreme defensive games, protecting their gold hoards at all costs. Large-scale military wars using bullets and guns might decrease because no government would have enough gold to fund giant armies, but instead, humanity would enter a fierce and brutal resource war unprecedented in history. At some point, when the extractable gold reserves on the Earth's surface became increasingly depleted, mankind would have no choice but to look up into the dark sky. History would witness an unprecedented space race, not for romantic ideals of scientific discovery, not in search of extraterrestrial life, but a purely economic race for survival. The crosshairs of superpowers and massive aerospace corporations would lock onto targets like the asteroid 16 Psyche. This is not a mindless rock drifting in space, it is a colossal block of metal floating between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter, carrying a payload of gold, platinum, and other precious metals estimated by scientists to be worth $10,000 quadrillion, a number massive enough to shatter all human concepts of money. Close your eyes and imagine a terrifying yet entirely logical scenario. Elon Musk's private space company or another tech billionaire succeeds in launching unmanned mining vessels, landing on 16 Psyche, and dragging even 1% of that gold back to Earth. That monumental event would not bring wealth to everyone. It would trigger the worst financial collapse in history. The sudden deluge of a massive amount of gold raining down on Earth would utterly destroy the scarcity ratio that maintains the value of the gold standard. But if control over that supply fell into private hands, Elon Musk would become the supreme and singular central bank of all humanity. He would possess the power to decide how much gold to release, thereby controlling the global inflation rate and dictating the prices of every essential commodity on the planet. Traditional national institutions and long-standing democracies would crumble before the absolute financial power of megaspace corporations. The world of 2026 would no longer be run by traditional macroeconomics. It would morph into a dark cyberpunk future, where the destiny and daily bread of billions of impoverished people on the ground would be entirely decided by brilliant, unelected individuals sitting on space stations. When we bravely piece all these brutal historical fragments and haunting fictional scenarios together, the grand picture that emerges is a painful mass of contradictions with no perfect solution. Richard Nixon's cold-blooded decision in 1971 was not merely a scam or a spontaneous historical accident. Looking deeper, it was a forced evolution, a painful molting process of the capitalist system in order to survive. Ending the gold standard threw wide the doors to an era of credit explosions and economic growth at an unseen pace, providing the massive capital needed to propel humanity into extraordinary leaps in technology, medicine, and raising the living standards of billions. But the exorbitant price we pay every single day is the limitless ballooning of the global public debt bubble, the explosion of wealth inequality to immoral levels, and the vicious cycle of inflation constantly eating away at the labor fruits of the lower classes. The gold standard, assessed fairly, is an incredibly heavy and reliable anchor. It keeps our economic ship safely harbored, unblown away by the raging storms of inflation, but it is also the very thing that prevents us from hoisting the sails to reach new lands, and most importantly, it is fully prepared to drag us straight to the bottom of the ocean when the sea turns violently turbulent. Today, as the BRICS nations strive to find and design a new monetary system, potentially based on a basket of real commodities or even a return to gold to escape the strangling dominance of the US dollar, they will face the most daunting historical riddle of all time. Will they possess enough wisdom to forge a fairer system, or will they ultimately lead humanity back down the disastrous path of the terrifying great deflations of the past? We stand at the dark crossroads of financial history, where every decision must be paid for in blood, and the choice now rests in your hands, the very people who toil day and night to create wealth. Would you rather accept living in a world of infinitely printed fiat money, where inflation silently robs your wealth every day but you always have the opportunity to rise in an ever-expanding economy, or do you crave a return to a gold standard world of absolute price stability and iron discipline, but one fully prepared to crush you under the gears of deflation and bloody financial purges with no one extending a hand to save you? The decision lies in your perspective, and I truly want to read your sharp counter-arguments in the comments section right below this video. If you found that these analyses have opened up new dimensions regarding how the power of money is quietly manipulating our lives, don't hesitate to hit the like button, share it with those who care, and subscribe to the channel to join us on our journey to decode the next thorny truths. See you all in the darkest mysteries of this world. However, for the loyal viewers who are still lingering in front of the screen right up to these moments, when the vast majority of the crowd has left, let us take one more step together, a step deeper into the microscope of history to strip bare the most brutal truths at the individual level. We have talked a lot about nations, about the Federal Reserve, about market-manipulating billionaires and armed superpowers. But macroeconomics, in the end, is merely an aggregate of billions of tiny microelements. Let's temporarily forget those dry academic concepts and join me in an extreme psychological experiment. Let's step into the shoes of a hypothetical character, we will call him David. David is a talented software engineer, 35 years old, living in Silicon Valley in the year 2026, but in a timeline where the gold standard still reigns supreme. Waking up on a Monday morning, David receives a salary notification from his company. There are no tens of thousands of dollars like we see today. His salary is calculated in ounces of gold, and this month, it has been cut by another 2%. This is not because David is underperforming, but because the global scarcity of gold has caused its value to rise compared to the previous month. His company cannot mine more gold, so to keep their profit margins from going negative, they are forced to squeeze the salaries of their entire workforce. David steps out of his house, staring at the apartment he borrowed his entire youth to buy 5 years ago. In our world, the devaluation of fiat money makes your fixed mortgage feel increasingly lighter as the years go by. But David is living in a reverse nightmare. The house he bought back then was priced at the equivalent of 500 ounces of gold. He borrowed 400 ounces from the bank at a fixed interest rate. Now, as the economy deflates, the value of David's labor drops disastrously, his salary shrinks, but that 400-ounce gold debt remains towering right there, cold and ruthlessly immovable. With every passing month, he has to work twice as hard, drain more of his strength to pay off the exact same debt figure. Do you see the sophisticated trap here? The gold standard has turned debt into a life sentence with no possibility of parole. It punishes those who dare to borrow money to buy a house, dare to borrow money to start a business, and rewards those who only know how to sit and hug the piles of assets locked in their safes. David's society is one paralyzed by investment phobia. Why would you open a restaurant? Why would you invest in a new production line or research a risky technology when you can simply buy gold, lock it in a basement, and watch its purchasing power automatically increase every year thanks to deflation? The core incentive for humans to push forward, the burning desire to accept risk in order to innovate, has been crushed in its infancy by the heavy yoke of gold. Let's look even broader, looking at Silicon Valley itself where David lives. Without the fiat monetary system and its infinite liquidity pumping capability from central banks, the modern technological world you enjoy today would probably never have been born. The trillion-dollar tech conglomerates, the giants that have transformed how we live, communicate, and work, from overnight delivery e-commerce platforms to artificial intelligence models capable of thinking like humans, were all nourished by cheap money. In their infancy, these companies generated absolutely zero profit. They burned billions of dollars every quarter, year after year, just to expand market share and gather data. Where did that colossal amount of money come from? It came from venture capital funds, those who directly benefited from the abundant credit created by the fiat system. If we were shackled by the gold standard, capital would be exceedingly scarce and expensive. No investor would be crazy enough to throw millions of ounces of real gold, a physical asset extracted through blood and sweat from miles-deep mines, into startup tech projects boasting a 99% failure rate. The tech world's classic mantra, "Move fast and break things," would become a suicidal curse. Technological innovation would be dragged back decades, and perhaps right now, in the 2026 of the gold standard timeline, we would still be using clunky flip phones instead of the ultra-thin supercomputers resting perfectly in the palms of our hands. This leads us to the deepest philosophical truth about the true nature of money. Throughout this documentary, we have exposed the ruthless dark corners of the fiat system, inflation robbing the poor of their wealth, banks being bailed out by tax dollars, and wealth inequality torn open to immoral extremes. But conversely, we must also acknowledge a fateful reality: fiat money, despite harboring countless toxic seeds, is the greatest technology of trust humanity has ever invented. It is not merely pieces of paper printed with the faces of former presidents or lifeless digital numbers blinking on a phone screen. It is, in essence, an economic time machine. By issuing credit based on fiat money, we are borrowing surplus values of the future that do not yet exist, pulling them back into the present to build roads, bridges, fund medical research centers to cure terminal illnesses, and develop space technology. Thanks to that ability to borrow from the future, the evolutionary speed of human civilization in the 50 years since the 1971 Nixon shock has far surpassed what our ancestors achieved in thousands of years combined. Debt, through this lens, is no longer a heinous sin. It is the internal combustion engine of the entire modern civilization. The problem does not lie in the money printer itself, but in who holds the keys to that machine, and how they distribute that flow of the future. The true war in the 21st century is not the battle between choosing the gold standard or choosing fiat money. History has proven the gold standard to be a defective system incapable of bearing the weight of a massive globalized economy, and fiat money is entering the final stages of its debt cycle with inflation bombs ready to detonate at any moment. The real war now is the journey to find a third-generation monetary system. A system that can combine the flexible capital-pumping power of fiat to drive growth and provide humanitarian relief during crises, but at the same time is bounded by transparent mathematical algorithms, incapable of being manipulated by any political will or the greed of a banking elite. Perhaps it will be an upgraded and perfected decentralized cryptocurrency network, or perhaps a basket of digital resources managed independently by hyper-intelligent AIs. We cannot know for sure what shape the future will take, but we know one thing with absolute certainty: the era of turning a blind eye and entrusting our wealth and livelihoods to decisions made behind the closed doors of central banks has come to an end. The mass awakening regarding the nature of money is the most powerful catalyst for the next financial revolution. When you look at the money in your hand today, remember that you are not just holding a lifeless medium of exchange. You are holding a piece of historical power, a witness to geopolitical calculations, and the result of thousands of years of struggle to price the labor of the human race itself. The education on money never ends in school, it continues every day through every financial decision you make. Keep being skeptical, keep asking questions, and most importantly, equip yourself with the sharpest knowledge to protect the fruits of your own labor in the turbulent era ahead. I wish you all maintain a clear mind and a vision that transcends time.